These are the 8 richest families that secretly own California, and their underground secrets are even wilder than their fortunes. We have a tech titan who built a secret bunker beneath his estate, a man who bought an entire Hawaiian island for his family, and at number 1, we'll see the most private billionaire on Earth, worth nearly $300 billion, who made a whole country promise never to speak about him. Let's get into it. Number 8. The Gallo Dynasty. We're starting with a family whose wine you have almost certainly held in your hand at some point in your life. The Gallo Dynasty is worth somewhere between $10 and $12 billion, and their story is the ultimate American hustle. Picture this. It's 1933, Prohibition has just ended, and 2 brothers in Modesto, Ernest and Julio Gallo, decide they're going to make wine. There's just one tiny problem. They have no idea how to actually do it. So what did they do? They went down into the basement of the Modesto Public Library, dug up some dusty old winemaking pamphlets from before Prohibition, and taught themselves the entire craft from scratch. And they did it on a shoestring, less than $6,000 to start, $5,000 of which Ernest borrowed from his mother-in-law. From library books and a borrowed $5 grand, these 2 built what is today the largest family-owned winery on the entire planet, pulling in over $5 billion a year. And here's the thing, you know their products even if you don't know the name. Barefoot, Carlo Rossi, Boone's Farm, Andre, the legendary Night Train. The Gallos quietly conquered the wine aisle of every grocery store in America. But their real power runs deeper than the bottle. The family wields enormous influence over California's agricultural lobby, quietly shaping the rules around water rights, farm labor, and land use to protect their Central Valley empire. When you control that much farmland and that much water in California, you control a lot more than wine. Today, the dynasty has gone full international high society. Gina Gallo, Julio's granddaughter and the head winemaker, married a flamboyant French wine producer, merging 2 of the most powerful wine families in the world. Though it hasn't all been smooth, the family once famously took their own younger brother Joseph to court to stop him from putting the Gallo name on his cheese business. Yes, they went to war over cheese. Because in this family, the name is the empire. Now the Gallos built their fortune on the land they farm. But our next man didn't just farm the land. He owns the actual ground that an entire county lives, works, and sleeps on. Number 7. The Bren Dynasty. Let me ask you a question. What would you do with $19 billion? Because Donald Bren did something almost unimaginable with his. He bought a county. Bren is the sole owner of the Irvine Company, and through it, he is the undisputed land baron of Southern California. We're talking about a man who controls the master plan development of huge chunks of Orange County. This isn't a guy who bought a nice mansion. This is a guy who engineered entire cities. The scale here is genuinely hard to wrap your head around. The Irvine Company owns over 129 million square feet of prime real estate. That's more than 590 office buildings and over 125 apartment complexes. And his reach stretches all the way across the country because he also owns a 97% stake in the iconic MetLife building towering over Manhattan. It all traces back to a historic ranch from 1864, a 185-square-mile tract of old Spanish and Mexican land grants, which Bren systematically transformed into the polished suburbs of Irvine, Newport Beach, and Laguna Niguel. So how does a man who owns a county live? Like an emperor, basically. His own lawyers once described his spending as being on the level of an Eastern potentate. During one court proceeding, his personal monthly expenses were estimated at anywhere from $125,000 to over $3 million a month. He keeps ultra-luxury estates in Newport Beach, in Bel Air, a penthouse in New York City, and a mountain ranch up in Idaho. And the transport fleet is exactly what you'd expect from royalty. Bren cruises the ocean on a 240-foot custom super yacht with a full-time professional crew, basically a floating oceanfront mansion. And for the skies, he keeps a fleet of 5 private jets with 2 full-time pilots, all run through a private jet company he conveniently owns himself. He is one of the most intensely private billionaires in America, a man who built the very ground beneath millions of people, while almost no one would recognize his face. Now, Bren built his empire out of physical land and concrete. But our next family built theirs out of something far more powerful, the control of information itself, and they've been doing it for over a century. Speaking of building something solid you can actually hold in your hand, that's what pulled someone on our team to the Pulse R8 Smart Ring. It tracks your heart rate, your sleep, and your workouts straight from your finger. A week on a single charge, 100 days with the case, and it's fully waterproof. The part that got us was the price. Under $40, a fraction of what the big-name rings cost, because it comes direct instead of through the retailers that mark everything up. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to a 100-year empire that began somewhere you'd never expect. Number 6. The Hearst Dynasty. If the other families on this list are new royalty, the Hearst Dynasty is the old guard, a fortune so deep it spans 3 different centuries. Worth around $24 billion today, this family's wealth didn't start with media at all. It started underground, in the mines. Back in the 1800s, George Hearst struck it massively rich digging up silver and gold, building a fortune that in today's money would rival the biggest names on this very list. But it was his son who changed America forever. In 1887, William Randolph Hearst took that mining money and bought a newspaper, the San Francisco Examiner. And from that single paper, he built the most dominant media empire the country had ever seen, becoming so influential and so legendary that he inspired one of the greatest films ever made. That empire still roars today. Under the current chairman, the Hearst Corporation pulled in a record $13.5 billion in a single recent year, with its fingers in ESPN, A&E Networks, Cosmopolitan, Elle, and the San Francisco Chronicle. The crown jewel of the family legacy is Hearst Castle, that breathtaking palace up in San Simeon, stuffed with European antiquities, ancient ceilings, and entire choir stalls imported from a cathedral in Spain. It is a monument to a level of wealth that almost doesn't exist anymore. But the Hearst story also carries one of the most shocking chapters in American crime history. In 1974, 19-year-old Patty Hearst, the granddaughter of the media emperor, was kidnapped from her Berkeley apartment by a radical militant group. In a truly surreal turn, her captors demanded the family give away millions of dollars in food to the poor across the Bay Area, which her father immediately did. It became one of the most closely followed ordeals of the century, and it took decades and 2 separate presidents for Patty to be granted clemency, and finally, a full pardon. Today, the family's public image has softened considerably, with heirs like Lydia and Amanda Hearst building their own careers as high-fashion models worth $100 million each. From silver mines to magazine covers, the Hearsts simply refuse to fade. Now, that was the oldest money on our list. From here on out, we leave the old world completely behind, because we're entering the realm of the Silicon Valley gods, where fortunes aren't measured in billions but in hundreds of billions. Number 5. The Huang Dynasty. You can spot him instantly. The black leather jacket is basically a uniform at this point. Jensen Huang, the man behind NVIDIA, has ridden the artificial intelligence explosion to a personal fortune estimated between $114 and $180 billion. And the wild part is how recent this is. For years, NVIDIA was known mostly for making graphics chips for video games. Then the AI boom hit. The world suddenly needed his chips to build everything, and his company's value briefly rocketed past $5 trillion. Trillion, with a T. Huang's origin is pure Silicon Valley. He finished his master's at Stanford, and the very next year, in 1993, he co-founded NVIDIA. Fun fact, the name comes from the Latin word for envy, which feels pretty fitting for a company every competitor on Earth is now desperately chasing. And the family has structured its wealth with serious intent. Their private foundation controls over $10 billion in company shares, which they've used for massive donations, including $50 million to build a cutting-edge AI research hub at a university. But the most fascinating part of the Huang dynasty is how he's handling the next generation. Both of his children, Spencer and Madison, originally ran as far from the tech world as humanly possible. Spencer studied cultural studies and ran an award-winning cocktail lab in Taipei. Madison trained in French culinary arts in Paris and spent years in luxury marketing. These were not your typical engineers. Yet today, both are executives inside NVIDIA. But here's the clever, calculated move. To avoid all the obvious accusations of nepotism, Jensen deliberately kept his kids away from the company's core money-printing chip division. Instead, he placed them in the futuristic divisions, robotics, and virtual world simulation, the bets that will define the company decades from now. And if you want a little extra drama, consider this. Jensen Huang's own cousin is Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD, NVIDIA's single biggest rival. So the two people leading the global AI chip war are literally family. You can't make this stuff up. Now, Huang's fortune was built on the chips of the future. Our next man built his on the code that runs the entire business world. And for one brief, shining moment, it made him the single richest human being on the planet. Number 4. The Ellison Dynasty. Larry Ellison is worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 billion, and in September of 2025, when Oracle's stock went on a tear, he briefly became the richest person in the entire world. Not bad for a guy who dropped out of 2 different universities. Ellison was born in New York to a young immigrant mother, was adopted, and was actually named after Ellis Island. He bounced around with no degree until he made one brilliant bet in 1977 that a thing called the database would one day run all of modern business. He was extremely right. Today, Oracle's software quietly powers a massive chunk of the corporate world. But where Ellison truly separates himself is how he spends. The Wall Street Journal literally called him the nation's most avid trophy home buyer, and the man earns the title. His main California home in Woodside is a 23-acre estate modeled after a 16th-century Japanese imperial palace. It took 9 years to build and cost over $200 million. And that's just one house. Down in Malibu, on a stretch so exclusive it's nicknamed Billionaire's Beach, Ellison didn't buy a beach house. He bought the beach, snapping up nearly 24 ultra-luxury properties for a couple $100 million, including a famous Japanese-style inn and restaurant he co-owns with the actor Robert De Niro. But the ultimate flex? In 2012, Larry Ellison bought 98% of an entire Hawaiian island, the whole island of Lanai, for around $300 million. When you're this rich, you don't book a vacation, you buy the destination. And the family's reach extends way beyond tech. His 2 children, David and Megan, skipped the tech world entirely and conquered Hollywood with their father's backing. David now runs a studio that took control of the entertainment giant Paramount, while Megan produces award-winning films. As for Larry himself, he's a notorious health fanatic who avoids alcohol and drugs entirely to keep his mind sharp. Oh, and he once loved a particular sports car so much that he bought dozens of them just to hand out as gifts to his colleagues. Recently, he shifted his legal home base to Florida, but make no mistake, his empire and his palaces remain rooted in California soil. Now, Ellison buys islands out in the open for everyone to see. Our next billionaire did the opposite. He spent his fortune building things he desperately wanted to keep hidden, including a secret bunker buried beneath the earth. Number 3. The Zuckerberg-Chan Dynasty. Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan are worth as much as $248 billion, built of course on the social media empire of Meta, the company behind Facebook and Instagram. But forget the boardroom for a second, because the way this family lives is honestly one of the strangest and most fascinating stories on this entire list. It all centers on their compound in Palo Alto, where they quietly bought up 11 separate neighboring properties and fused them into one massive, heavily guarded fortress. And inside that fortress, things got weird, and the neighbors were not happy. Starting around 2021, the people living nearby discovered that the Zuckerbergs were running an unlicensed private school right inside their compound. The school was reportedly named after the family's pet chicken, enrolled up to 30 students, and even converted a garage into a classroom, all in a quiet neighborhood zoned strictly for single homes. The neighbors revolted over the noise, the traffic, and the small army of private security guards. One city official dryly noted that the property seemed to belong to more than just a homeowner with a security fetish. Eventually, the city stepped in, ruled it a zoning violation, and forced the secret school to shut down. And it gets quirkier. Their main house reportedly features a custom artificial intelligence assistant voiced to sound like the actor Morgan Freeman, along with a pneumatic cannon that fires T-shirts. But behind all the playful eccentricity lies something that feels genuinely out of a movie. On the Hawaiian island of Kauai, the couple has been building a colossal 2,300-acre estate for over $300 million. It features multiple mansions, guest houses, and a spa. But here's the headline. Buried beneath the property is a secure 5,000-square-foot underground bunker, connected to the main houses through a network of subterranean tunnels. And every single worker who built it was reportedly forced to sign a strict non-disclosure agreement. A literal doomsday bunker, hidden under a tropical paradise. And recently, the family dropped a record-shattering $170 million on an estate in a Miami enclave so secure it's actually nicknamed the Billionaire's bunker. This family doesn't just value privacy, they build it into the earth itself. Now, Zuckerberg builds his secrets underground. Our next billionaire, one of his fellow tech founders, builds his out in the open and up in the sky, including a private army and the largest aircraft to fly in nearly a century. Number 2. The Brin Dynasty. Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, sits on an absolutely staggering fortune of up to $270 billion. As a controlling shareholder of Google's parent company, he helped build the search engine that quite literally organized the world's information. But while his old partner chases total privacy, Sergey Brin spends his money on some of the most jaw-dropping passion projects you will ever hear about. This is where it gets fun. First, there's the airship. Brin founded a research company devoted to bringing back the giant rigid airship, the kind of majestic flying machine the world hasn't really seen since the 1930s. Operating out of a historic hangar at a former NASA airfield, his team built a craft called Pathfinder 1. It is a 400-foot-long helium-powered carbon fiber airship, and it currently holds the title of the largest aircraft flying anywhere on Earth. The man is single-handedly trying to resurrect a lost age of flight. But the airship isn't even the most incredible thing he owns. Brin also quietly runs his own private humanitarian rescue force. It's a rapid response disaster relief organization staffed largely by former military special forces operators. And how do they deploy to a crisis? They launch directly off of Brin's personal superyacht. This private army for good has been used to run COVID testing operations back in California and to deliver emergency relief after hurricanes out in the Pacific. Let that sink in. This man has a special forces team and a superyacht command center on standby for global emergencies. And of course, the standard billionaire toys are there too, just turned up to 11. Along with his Google co-founder, Brin co-owns a fleet of 8 private aircraft. We're talking multiple Gulfstreams, a full-size Boeing 757, and, just for good measure, an actual decommissioned fighter jet. Between the resurrected airships, the Special Forces yacht, and the personal fighter jet, Sergey Brin might just have the single coolest collection of toys of any billionaire alive. But as wild as his fortune is, there's still one man in California who stands above even him. His old partner. The richest of them all. Number 1, the Page Dynasty. And here he is sitting at the absolute summit of California's wealth, Larry Page. The other co-founder of Google, Page is worth an almost incomprehensible amount, somewhere between $257 and $296 billion. To put that in perspective, his fortune dwarfs nearly everyone else we've talked about today. And the entire thing was built on a single piece of genius, the search algorithm he created as a PhD student at Stanford back in 1998. That one idea became Google, and Google became the front door to the internet itself. But here is the great paradox of Larry Page. He is the richest man in the state, and also the one you are least likely to ever see, because Page has dedicated an enormous portion of his fortune to one singular goal: vanishing. Look at how he handles his homes. In Palo Alto, he didn't just buy a mansion. He bought the surrounding houses too and then demolished them, just to build a buffer of privacy around himself. The man literally erases his own neighborhood to be left alone. And his global escape plan is on another level entirely. Page owns a private island in the British Virgin Islands, sitting right next to the famous island owned by Richard Branson. But when the pandemic hit, he went even further off the grid, relocating his family all the way to Fiji. And according to reports, he didn't just buy a private island there. He reportedly got the Fijian government itself to enforce a total media blackout about his arrival. Think about that level of power. He made an entire country agree to pretend he wasn't even there. To move between his secret kingdoms, Page cruises on a $45 million adventure super yacht, complete with a helicopter landing pad, and he flies out of an $82 million private airport terminal he built with Bryn. But to show you these titans are still human, here's the perfect closing story. Page and Bryn once got into such a heated argument over what size bed to install in their shared private Boeing 757 that Google's CEO had to step in and referee. The solution? Each man got to pick his own bed for his own bedroom on the plane. Because when you're worth this much, you don't compromise. You just buy 2 beds. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the richest family in California. So there you have it. From the Gallo Vineyards quietly controlling the water of the Central Valley, to Donald Bren owning the very streets of Orange County, to the Silicon Valley gods like Zuckerberg and Page building bunkers and buying islands to disappear. These 8 families don't just live in California. They own its land, its media, its technology, and the hidden levers of power that the rest of us never even see. That is the real underground secret. The Golden State has a set of owners, and now you know exactly who they are. So which one shocked you the most? Was it the family with the doomsday bunker hidden under their estate? The man who bought himself an entire Hawaiian island? Or the richest billionaire of all who made a whole country promise to keep his secret? Drop your answer down in the comments. We genuinely love reading them. And if you enjoyed this one, do us a quick favor, smash that like button, subscribe to Global Status, and we will see you in the next one.